The supply chain crisis of 2025. How tariffs, ports, and politics broke the system again. The front line of President Trump's intensifying trade war with China isn't just in Washington or Beijing. It's right here on the docks of America's busiest twin ports, Los Angeles and Long Beach. The battle is no longer theoretical. It's visible in the backed-up container ships, the mounting freight costs, the empty shelves, and the silent factories. And this time, the consequences reach deeper, spread wider, and hit harder than anything we saw during the COVID-era chaos. In June 2025, President Trump reimposed tariffs as high as 145% on key Chinese imports, igniting a firestorm across global trade routes. For businesses and families alike, the fallout is immediate. Fewer choices on store shelves, higher prices online, and shrinking household budgets. What used to cost $10 now costs $20 or more. And behind that inflation is a jammed, crumbling supply chain now being pulled to its breaking point. Take Kenny, a small business owner who sells baby spoons, mats, bento boxes, basic parenting essentials. Her products are made in China, shipped by sea, and arrive in bulk at these very ports. Or at least they used to. Now Kenny faces a staggering 125% tariff on all her goods. That's not a marginal increase. That's a business-threatening spike. And she's not alone, because across the U.S. import landscape, the symptoms of a deeper disease are returning. Ports are once again clogged, ships anchored offshore for days or weeks, containers stacking faster than they can be moved. The arteries of global trade are choking, and this time, it's not a temporary hiccup. This is structural, and it's dangerous. Amazon sees it. Target sees it. They've lived through this storm before. But this time, even the giants are feeling the shockwaves. Fear, not demand, is driving the surge in January and February of 2025. U.S. ports were flooded with cargo. Ships arrived in numbers not seen since the panic-fueled buying sprees of the pandemic years. But there was no health crisis driving this new surge. This time, it was fear. Retailers rushed to bring in inventory ahead of expected tariff hikes. Whispers in D.C. became policy overnight. Under pressure from domestic manufacturers and powerful labor unions, the White House revived and escalated Trump-era tariffs on Chinese imports, particularly targeting electronics, consumer goods, and industrial components. Retailers, knowing what was coming, pulled forward orders at an unprecedented scale. The result? Rail yards and ports they had barely recovered from the last round of disruptions were thrown back into chaos. But this wasn't just a matter of volume. As containers poured in, another storm was brewing, one just as disruptive and harder to control. The collapse within labor, logistics, and equipment failures. As cargo volumes exploded, labor unrest hit critical nodes in the chain. Dock workers on both coasts citing unsafe conditions, low staffing, and unresolved contracts threatened strikes. At the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, even the mere threat of a walkout sent shockwaves through global logistics networks. Shippers rerouted vessels, diverted containers to alternate ports, and scrambled to buy time. But that bought time came at a cost. The East Coast, particularly ports like Savannah and Charleston, began to choke under the redirected pressure. In 1 week in March, more than 50 vessels were recorded waiting at anchor off the southeastern seaboard. Under normal conditions, that number would have been 5 or 6. Meanwhile, a different kind of breakdown was spreading inland. The early year cargo rush had pulled containers deep into the country to Dallas, Memphis, Chicago. But now, those containers sat empty. Why? Because there weren't enough chassis, trucks, or rail cars to return them to port. Some inland rail hubs simply shut down new bookings. They couldn't move empties fast enough. The result was a gridlock that pushed the system into paralysis. Ships sat idle, unable to unload. Those that managed to offload faced a second choke. Point: a severe shortage of warehouse workers and long-haul truck drivers. A few available teams were overwhelmed. Product lingered longer. Warehouses hit capacity. Delivery costs skyrocketed. And then came nature. The Panama Canal disaster in what experts now call the driest season in more than 50 years. The Panama Canal already strained saw water levels plunge to catastrophic lows. With less water to support transits, the Canal Authority slashed ship capacity by a third. Vessels carrying goods from Asia to the U.S. East Coast were suddenly stuck in linesum for more than 2 weeks. Others were rerouted entirely, forced to loop around the southern tip of Africa, adding thousands of miles and up to 3 weeks to delivery times. In the world of modern logistics, that's not a delay, it's a disaster. Just in time becomes just too late. Retailers waiting on spring inventory watched the calendar anxiously. Would their shipments make it before summer? Before back to school? Before Christmas? And in boardrooms across America, 2 companies moved first. Amazon's logistics empire strains to adapt. Amazon had seen this movie before. In 2020 and 2021, the e-commerce giant experienced firsthand what a shattered supply chain could do to customer expectations. They vowed never to be that vulnerable again. By 2023, Amazon had built one of the world's largest private logistics networks. 20,000 proprietary containers, a fleet of 60,000 trailers, nearly 90 aircraft, and hundreds of regional sorting centers. In 2025, that empire was put to the test. As ports clogged this spring, Amazon sprang into action. Shipments originally bound for Los Angeles were rerouted to alternative ports: Houston, New Orleans, even East Coast terminals. Internal rail lines kicked into gear. Fulfillment centers were adjusted to handle more regional variation. Even Amazon's internal air fleet was shifted to pick up mid-mile deliveries flights from overloaded facilities to others with spare capacity. But even Amazon Immense, automated, vertically integrated Amazon, couldn't escape all of the strain. Prime Day, typically a 2-day July event, was stretched into 4. The company said it was to maximize value. Insiders say otherwise. The system couldn't handle a short-term sales surge. The fulfillment network was too strained. Orders too unpredictable. They needed time, not just trucks. When third-party sellers began overloading Amazon warehouses with early inventory in anticipation of future delays, Amazon responded with limits. Sellers were told to hold product. The risk was clear: too much. Stock in the wrong place could crush the very delivery promise that Amazon built its brand on. Target's cautious comeback target took a different path. In 2022, it learned a painful lesson: billions of dollars in overstock, unsold goods, markdowns, and lost margin. So this time, their strategy was early but careful. Yes, they pulled forward orders, but forecasting tools were upgraded.